Hi, everyone. It's Lisa Gilbert here, co president of Public Citizen, back with another episode of Public Citizen's new substack, Informed Resistance. This time, I am really excited to be speaking with one of our own, Public Citizen's Zach Everson. He is our new Trump accountability researcher and has been putting together some really fantastic work. Some of you may know him already from his previous work as a journalist investigating Trump corruption in both terms. And now he has a new report coming out that we wanted to highlight on this Substack about crypto corruption, World Liberty Financial, Binance, things we're going to get into and describe, and also some of the connections to foreign influence and how it touches on what's going on in Iran right now. So lots of relevance, lots to unpack. And Zach, welcome.
Thanks. Thanks so much for having me back on Substack. This is Substack's where I first started reporting on Trump's conflicts. So there was no live video at the time. So anyways, yeah, excited to be here.
Yes, the platform has evolved. We've been very excited to add it to the Public Citizen Rolodex of things we can do to share information with all of our great folks out there. So really excited to have you here with us today and to jump in on all the fantastic work that you're doing. So I said a bunch of, big words about the different types of crypto and the different sorts of corruption that you looked at in this explicit report. But I think before we go there, let's maybe take a step back for folks who are joining us and listening, just to talk about the conflicts of interest in this administration at a macro level. They are absolutely out of control. So I wanted to ask you, since you've been looking at it for such a long period of time along with us, do you think it's worse? What do you think of the terrain right now in contrast to when you first started following all of this?
When I talk to other reporters who are also on the Trump org beat from the first term, I mean, we kind of laugh about how quaint and ethical those halcyon days seemed. It's just insane. And they were making money there. There was all sorts of ethical problems. There were emoluments issues. But in terms of money, it was smaller. We were looking at hotel rooms or maybe marketing deals and golf fees. And the Trumps showed some restraint, not as much restraint as I think a lot of people wish they had done, but, they promised no new foreign deals and they had a fairly liberal interpretation of that, but it was more than what we're seeing this term. Some examples at the beginning of the first term, there was no trumpstore.com. It was just directing people to physical retail space. And then when they did introduce it later on in the term, it was just golf merch. There was nothing really associated with the presidency. This time out, it is loaded with presidential stuff. Within hours of him winning the presidency, they were out there with a 45-47 line. I mean, there's just no shortage of merchandise that is geared towards this presidency, heck, even Trump 2028. Another example, one of the things that they were selling in that first term, one of the few times that they did blatantly put the White House on a product, was a set of soaps. They had 3 soap bars, and the middle of them is the Cherry Blossom collection, and they had different scenes from around DC, and the middle one was the White House. After I reported on that, the middle bar of soap was no longer wrapped. So the soap bars, you get the 3, and you'd have the left and the right ones, but the middle ones wasn't there. And then there's also the presidential seal. They were caught by our friends over at ProPublica it looked like they were about to start using the presidential seal on golf markers. ProPublica reported it. Trump org walked it back. Oh, nothing to do with us. It was a gift from our, some supporters. This time they have the presidential seal is on display at least 6 of his golf courses, possibly in violation of U.S. law. They just don't care. And that brings us to crypto, where the big difference is it's a lot harder for people to understand. I think a lot of times when I was covering it previously, and people can understand a hotel room. And crypto is kind of like, what do I do with that? It's a lot more opaque. It can be tracked, but it requires more specialized knowledge. But the money is insane. According to my former employer Forbes, Donald Trump's net worth has gone up $2 billion since he was reelected to $6.3 billion. Eric's is up tenfold to $400 million. Don Jr. is up 6-fold to $300 million, and 20-year-old Barron is worth $150 million. And that brings us back to World Liberty Financial, which is the reason for a lot of that jump in wealth.
Yeah. Okay. Really helpful to hear how it feels different to you since you've been looking at it for so long. I think for many folks, it was sort of an accepted, understood mob boss mentality. They're going to profit off the presidency. That's what Trump did in the first term. So why is this different? So I think it is good for us to look at how out of control the actual money they are making has become, and what a real difference it is from, as you said, what felt kind of corrupt but quaint in the first term. Well, you took us to crypto, and obviously this is the meat of your new report that you're coming out with, and of course excited for everyone listening to check it out when we put it out. But tell us a little bit more about that. You mentioned World Liberty Financial. If you could describe that for folks who are listening, and then also how is the Trump family connected to it? What's their interest there?
Yeah. So, Donald Trump famously tweeted that he didn't think crypto was worth anything. It was just valued on thin air. But then Donald Trump learned there was money to be made on thin air. So in the waning days of the last campaign, they launched World Liberty Financial. He did it with a live stream on Twitter, which was mostly a campaign speech of him going through his grievances. Um, Now, he launched this with his three sons and also Steve Witkoff, who's now in the administration as the peace envoy, and two of Witkoff's sons, Zach and Alex. So a lot of people very connected to this administration are involved in this entity. Now, this is not just your typical Trump marketing deal where he sticks his name on it, puts his face on it, and walks away and just gets money in return. He is deeply involved in this. Um, He's listed as the co-founder emeritus, as is Witkoff, and his three sons are all listed as co-founders. He was listed, it says it's inspired by Donald Trump. At one point, he was listed as their chief crypto advocate. Um, an entity, an LLC connected to the Trump family, owns about 38% of the company. They are entitled to 75% of the proceeds from token sales. We'll get into that in a little bit. And they own 22.5 billion tokens. So this is instrumental to their wealth, not just some sort of little deal like some of his other, like the NFT trading cards that he did digitally were. According to Forbes, he's already netted $550 million from token sales, and the total family exposure to this entity is about $1 billion. Witkoff's wealth grew 280 million in the last year, according to Forbes, almost entirely from World Liberty Financial. Now, how does World Liberty Financial make that money? Great questions. There are, because I asked it, there are two main tokens that it has. The first one it came out with is World Liberty, is just WLFI, and that is a crypto, it's a token. There is no ownership interest in anything. It just allows, there's nothing backing it up, there's no reserves. It just allows token holders to vote on issues concerning that platform. Kind of like Magic Beans. Maybe there's a little magic to it, probably not. Originally, they weren't even you couldn't even sell them. They were locked up and they were only available to accredited investors or foreign investors. So it was really limited group of people who could get them, and most Americans couldn't. I mean, it was geared more towards foreigners there. The other product that they have is USD1, and this is the one we're going to talk about the most. This is a stable coin, and that means it is a crypto token, but is backed ideally one-to-one with reserves. In this case, US treasuries, cash, US money markets, things of that nature are backing it up. So the way that World Liberty Financial makes money off of this is very similar to a bank. If I'm going to make a deal in USD1, and I'm not, but just if I were, I would give the cash to World Liberty Financial. They would give me the USD1, and then I would use it to pay to somebody or make a transaction. US World Liberty Financial would get to take that cash I gave them, and they would use that to invest in those short-term instruments, and they would get to keep the interest on that. So that is how they make money off that deal.
Got it. Got it. A couple things you said in there, very helpful unpacking, but just thinking of Trump having a role as chief crypto advisor. I'd rather he actually focus on being president. So that is an interesting thing that you could have that additional job and be profiting to this extent while president. I suppose I wouldn't rather he focus on being president, rather he's not there at all. But to the extent that he has that job seems very inappropriate. And then also just interesting to think of these massive dollar amounts and what it means. He would not be able to have this gravitas and make this amount of money if not currently serving where he is. So just very helpful to understand. In addition to just a little bit about how crypto works. So there's another big actor in your report that you talk about, Binance. So would love for folks to have a better understanding of that and how it's connected to World Liberty Financial and what you were just sharing. So if you could.
Sure. So, they launched those cryptocurrencies and you still need people to use them. Just putting it out there. I mean, you can create a meme coin in 15 minutes, but you still need people to take up on these products. Binance has been influential in helping Donald Trump and World Liberty Financial do that. Binance is the world's largest crypto exchange. Most importantly, to what we're going to be talking about, it pleaded guilty in 2023 to sanctions and money laundering violations, paid $4.3 billion in penalties to the United States, one of the largest crypto penalties ever. Its CEO and founder, CZ, pleaded guilty to failing to maintain effective anti-money laundering programs, served 4 months in prison. Now, this happened in 2023, about a year before World Liberty Financial launched, and they're like, hey, you know what? Let's go into business with these guys. They seem like who we want to do business with, which is just insane. According to Reuters, uh, according to Reuters, Binance did $8 billion in Iranian transactions up
Mm.
through 2022, and this wasn't unknown. Um, and this is not just that World Liberty Financial is trading; it's trading USD1 or WLFI on Binance. This is a very, World Liberty Financial is called it integral to its business. Binance helps donate the software that launched it. It selected USD1 for a $2 billion investment it got from a UAE-backed investment fund, which really just put it on the map. It hadn't even really taken, I don't even think it hadn't launched yet by the time the deal was announced publicly. And all of a sudden they had $2 billion, which just puts it on the list of the largest stable coins out there, really put it on the map. And what's especially interesting about that is for an article I was doing at Forbes at the time, I asked, like, why did you guys choose USD1 to use for this? I get it that if you're going to invest in Binance, Binance is going to want that investment in crypto. I understand that. Um, they chose USD1 for a variety of reasons, one of which they said was its compliance history. It didn't officially launch till 2 weeks later. Like,
Right.
is that telling us the best compliance history you can have is just not having one for crypto? That's a little concerning. Um, so right now, Binance holds 83% of the USD1 that's out there. Remember, one of the things crypto advocates say is it's decentralized finance. Well, here you've got a stable coin connected to the US president, 83% of which is at one exchange. And that is a very high number. I went through and I looked at the top 10 stable coins by market cap and looked at the concentrations on exchanges. None of them were near that. There were two that were actually like the house stable coin on an exchange. And even they were like in the 50s or 60s. The median one was like 30%. So this is a really high concentration. And then, of course, what people are going to know about Trump and Binance is that Trump pardoned CZ. He was out of jail, but he got that pardon. The SEC dropped its lawsuit into looking at Binance, and there've been about 14 or 15 other crypto cases have been dismissed by this administration. The American people should know if something like that is happening, that it's because the president thinks it's in the best interest of the people, not the best interest of his bottom line.
Yeah. Well, super glad that you lifted just the lack of accountability we've seen so far for some of these bad actors. We've been tracking, for example, how DOJ has been dropping corporate enforcement at incredible levels, obviously under Pam Bondi, but soon to be under someone else, currently under Todd Blanche. We've seen the SEC drop in enforcement in a huge way. So corporate bad actors are getting off in every direction. And so not surprising to hear this about Binance, but even more disturbing when we hear about the personal profiteering that's happening. So appreciate that. One other thing that you mentioned, which obviously has incredible relevance right now, is the international ties, the foreign ties that Binance has to Iran. Obviously, we've all been watching this horribly disturbing war in Iran and the threats, inhumane and unhinged threats of the last, 72 hours, which is giving everyone whiplash and distress and fear about what might happen internationally and our role in the world. But also, a piece of the story is conflicts of interest. And your report looked closely at some of how these crypto pieces connect into all of that. So, would love to hear a little more about what you found there for our listeners.
Yeah, the largest one is that you've got a business that is integral to the Trump's wealth is connected to finance, which has for years helped Iranian entities skirt sanctions. According to our own U.S. government's press releases, according to lawsuit filed by families, members of the victims of the October 7th attack, also some analysis from groups that do blockchain analysis. This is supporting terrorism. This terrorist have used Binance to move funds around. This is not just an Iranian, trying to make a little money off crypto. These are groups that have supported terrorist organizations are doing this, and this is our president is in business with a company that's okay with this. At the same time, he is deploying our troops over there, putting them at risk, putting the whole world at risk. It doesn't make sense. Like this is just a massive inconsistency going on here, and I think it shows that Trump is willing to do whatever he needs to do to keep his business stuff going. And if that means working with somebody who might be against him politically, okay, fine. But that's the angle on that. And there are reports that this is still going on. Fortune recently reported that Fortune, Wall Street Journal, and the New York Times have all reported recently that there are still Iranian entities using Binance. As this is going on. Now, this World Liberty Financial has the option of saying, hey, you know what? We don't want to be as involved with you guys as we are. Maybe you list this on your exchange. You don't, we can't do anything about that, but let's back off from this. We don't like the fact you've been so lax with this. They're not. They're actually looking to grow their relationship with Binance. They are funding promotions that encourage people to hold USD1 on Binance. So, even trying to increase that 83%. And these are going on now. There are promotions going on right now that if you hold USD1, you will get awards of World Liberty Financial there. The other angle is 4 days before Trump took office again, he sold a sizable chunk, 49% of World Liberty Financial, to a sheikh in Dubai, or excuse me, Abu Dhabi. Not just any sheikh. This is the UAE's national security advisor. About $187 million from this deal flowed through to the Trumps 4 days before he was reelected, or excuse me, before he was reinaugurated. That is a massive, massive conflict. I mean, UAE is separated by what, like 50 miles from Iran? They have massive interest in U.S. foreign policy, and their spy master is a big business partner of Donald Trump's. Major flag. And then you've got Pakistan, which is looking to host negotiations between U.S. and Iran. They've really put themselves out there on the diplomatic front.
Mm-hmm.
They are also a business partner of World Liberty Financial. Zach Witkoff, the CEO of World Liberty Financial and the son of Steve, has gone over there a couple times. He has met with the prime minister there, or student president there. They roll out the red carpet for him. And yeah, his father is supposed to be one of the top people negotiating on behalf of the United States. It's certainly problematic.
Yeah, to say the least. Okay, really helpful to hear about all of this. And, as you were talking, I'm seeing people in the chat sort of talk about, are there accountability mechanisms? What can we do? I think worth flagging that at Public Citizen, we've been fighting hard against legislation that would further deregulate crypto. One of the reasons that it is used so aggressively for money laundering and drug-related work and foreign terrorist affiliations, as Zach was describing, is because it is so underregulated and not treated as a currency when it is acting as one. And so we are continuing to fight at Public Citizen to stop deregulation and push for stronger regulation when we next have an opportunity. But also just spotlighting, as Zach's report will do, all of this corruption, because I think one issue here is that some of this can feel harder to understand. It's easy to wrap your arms around Qatar giving a plane as a gift. That's some pretty obvious corruption. It's a little harder to understand some of this. So I really appreciate the sort of you walking us through it, through the grift we're seeing, as Francis just put in the chat, and also how it fits together. And actually, this is my last question. So I wanted to ask you, how should we think about following crypto entanglements and future work that you're going to do perhaps to do that, because it is harder to understand, but also because it's one of the places of worst abuse right now.
Yeah. It doesn't necessarily need to be harder to understand. I mean, I started on crypto a couple years ago. I didn't really know a ton about it. In fact, after Trump was reelected, I was like, okay, we're doing this again. I started tracking it. Who was at Mar-a-Lago? Did a report on who showed up at Mar-a-Lago between his reelection and his inauguration, and it was massive amounts. But then after I published that, it just hit me. It's like that's not where the money is this time. The money is with crypto. So I started by watching a masterclass on crypto. The thing you can subscribe to. One of the teachers, by the way, of that is CZ, who is the later imprisoned head of Binance.
Yeah,
They now start off that masterclass with the disclaimer saying like, "Hey, yeah, by the way, our teacher spent a little time in jail."
that's funny.
Yeah, which is a great introduction to crypto, but it's at its basics, it's not that difficult to understand. It's kind of like following a new sport. There's a lot of language that gets involved, and you can get very deep in it, but you don't necessarily have to. Um, so just because you see crypto there, it doesn't look into it. It's not that difficult. You can just quickly look up some of these terms and get a good understanding of it. The other thing is it's can be traced. It's one of the things is this is all on a public ledger. So it requires a little bit more specialized knowledge than being able to, read a hotel bill and say, "Oh, okay, China just spent X amount of dollars in a Trump property." But there are companies out there that will do that. You can RKM chain analysis, do this blockchain analysis that you can see. And you can go look on it. I mean, that's where I saw that the 83% of World Liberty Financial was being held at Binance. I mean, or USD1, that just took me looking at one screen. That was not difficult at all to figure out. So I would recommend people just take a little bit of a look at that. Don't run away from it. And also, this administration is actively dismantling the agencies that could use those tools to enforce crypto law and get more, try to prevent these issues from happening in the first place. So hopefully that is something that we will see change where those agencies are empowered to start using those tools, because there's really no reason for this to continue.
Exactly. And let me also add, so if you don't even feel like looking at that one screen, we have Zach here on Public Citizen staff to do it for you, including in the report we've been talking about, which everyone should read. It's going to be posted to citizen.org, which is our website, as soon as it's live, coming very shortly. And we'll also cross-post it to this Substack so you can all find it. On that note, I want to make sure that everyone is subscribed so you get our updates, when we're live. We're going to be continuously talking here about Public Citizen's relentless work on Trump accountability, and you'll be able to stay informed. That's why we're calling this Substack Informed Resistance, on all of the lawless actions we're seeing and how you can fight back and how we at Public Citizen are fighting back and unpacking what's going on for you. So Zach, I want to thank you. This was so great. Really appreciate all the details, and I hope everyone listening did as well. We will have you back for sure. And for everyone listening, we will see you here next week on our next episode of Informed Resistance. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.